Today we're going to be looking at how to make your own prototype greyboxing textures within Material Maker. This material template has allowed me to create a bunch of different prototyping textures that I can plug into Trench Broom and just have at it with level design. I'm going to be putting a link to these prototype textures that you can grab for free. Hopefully you find it useful, but I want you to be able to create your own. So let's jump into it. The first thing you see is we're going to plug everything in. If you've ever done anything on, Unreal or doing material somewhere else, this is a pretty typical setup. You have your albedo, metallic, roughness, emission. I'm only going to be worrying about albedo today. So when you're in Material Maker, you can right click to add a node because everything in here is node based. And we're going to add a blend node. And we're not going to have anything to put into here yet, but this is basically where we're going to combine all of our different parts. And then we're going to plug this into our albedo. The first part we're going to create is our checkerboard pattern. And over here on the left side, you have a bunch of different nodes. Now, there is a lot over here, and there's tons and tons that you can do with it. It's basically endless, but there's going to be some that you're going to use a lot more than others. The checkerboard pattern right here within our pattern category is an excellent node for doing our type of grid setup. You'll also notice when you click on a node, it's going to pop up in our preview over here. You can also right click your output, so your node ends up being that preview too. In terms of size, you probably want something more along the lines of a 1x1, which will give you that basic look, or maybe you want to do a 2x2. It kind of depends on the resolution that you're going to use. We'll start with this 2x2 pattern. One thing you're going to notice is you're just going to be working in grayscale a lot. You're going to be working with values from 0 to 1. So when anything's black or white, you're just dealing with one value there. And when you're dealing with a color that's a vector 3, you've got 3 different values. We want to bring this black up a little bit. We're going to grab our output, drag it. We're going to get another node. And then I like to use the filter tones node. And that's going to allow you to bring this up, bring up our blacks, and then make it a little bit more even. There are different ways you can do that. I like to sort of visually see that. So that's what I like to use. And then once you have this, we can take this over here. And then we're going to use what is called the colorize mode. Now the colorize mode takes a black to white, a 0 to 1 value, and applies a gradient to it. It'll start off with your black to white. And if I change this black to, say, a lighter color, and make sure we are previewing that, and then change our white to, let's say, just a darker gray, make our black a little bit darker. There we go. That's one way you can colorize it. You can also just take this value itself and plug this into the gradient as well. And then you're just going to change that black there at the end. That's totally fine too. I like to have this version of it in case I want to adjust a bunch of different colors at the same time, which is kind of what I've done in my version. I've got 5 different sets, and then this allows me to adjust it for everything. You can do either way, but I'm going to plug that back in there. We've got our gray checkerboard now, and then we can take this and drag it into the background of our blend. Now we have this pink to white. That's just because we don't have anything plugged into our first layer. If we get rid of that, we're back to normal. Our second layer is going to be a bunch of lines. So let's head over to the left here, and we're going to grab the tiles node. Now the tiles node is a super useful node. You're going to use it a lot if you're in Material Maker. It's going to create a repeating pattern. And you can set the rows, you can set the columns, you can set the mortar, that is the distance, the border between those. And then you also have a bevel that you can adjust. All of this is super useful, but we're just going to use the basic version of this. So we don't want any bevel, and we're just going to take a little bit of a mortar there. And then for our rows and columns, we want to do a 2x2. You can already see that we have a grid pattern here. What we want to do is add this pattern on top of the gray pattern that we have. For our case, we want this to be white lines. So what we can do is take this and then use an invert. That just inverts all of our values. We now have a white grid pattern. And we can go ahead and take this and add it to our first layer of our blend. If we switch this to a screen, it's going to take the white values and brighten the underneath image, depending on the opacity that we use. Now that's one way you can do it. You could use a mix, but then also plug this into the opacity. And that's going to do a similar thing. But we also want the other lines here too. So let's duplicate this using Control D. We're going to pass that down there. We have our invert. We're going to create another invert. We'll plug that in. For this one, let's do a 4x4. That's going to give the next level of our grid pattern there. And we're going to do another blend. So we'll blend. This will be our second layer. This is going to go into our layer and our opacity if you're going to do it that way. And now you can set the mix like we did before. So you can use a screen again, adjust it that way, or you can do the opacity. Let's do screen just so you can see how that works. Now you'll notice if I select our final blend here and I adjust this value, we can see how that affects that blend. Now we don't want it as bright as our main grid, maybe just in the middle there. Perfect. And let's add the next level of grid lines too. So duplicate all of that. For this one, we want a 4x4, so we're going to multiply that by itself. So 16 by 16. We're going to need a little bit more of a mortar size to make that show up. Maybe like a 4. I think that looked fine, although we could go a little bit bigger. So we have our final level of our grid here. We're going to add another layer to our blend. You do that with this little button right there. Click that, add in our blend, set it to screen, and then we have our final grid. Perfect. Now, if you want to adjust this contrast, you can. That's kind of why I like to use the tone. And if you wanted to make this layer not as bright, we could do that too. Next, we're going to add this little corner spot up here. So when this texture repeats, they'll meet in the corners and you'll get a nice square effect for that. So let's add a new node, and this will be a shape node. Now the shape node gives you a bunch of different shapes. Obviously you have your circle. You can adjust the size of that circle, and then you can also adjust the bevel of that circle. We're probably just going to want flat. We don't want a circle, although you could totally do a circle. We're going to try to get a square. So we're going to go to polygon, and you can change the number of sides. We want 4 sides because it's a square, and we can make it smaller here. That's totally fine. Just get an idea. You can hit shift so you have a little bit more control. Maybe something kind of like that. That's 0.6. Now right now that square is in the middle. So we want to move that to the edge. So we're going to take this and then we're going to get a transform node. Now the transform node allows us to move it. You can move it by hand, which is kind of nifty if you want to move something manually. But we also have a translate that we can be super exact. So let's move it halfway to the right, halfway down. You'll see that it's just in the lower right. It's not repeating. That's because our mode is currently set to clamp. If we wanted to go beyond the edge, we want it to repeat. And now we have them at each corner, and we can do the opacity thing again. That's fine. Now we have our little squares in the corner. One more thing I'm going to show just for the basic prototyping grid setup. So I've added the Godot logo to mine just in case I forget what I'm using, right? It's still a checkerboard, but we've also used an alpha mask to hide every other one. So I'm going to show you how to do that. You can use an image node, or you can just drag the image into it and it'll become an image node. I'm going to copy what I had from the other project. So there's our image. Go ahead and clamp that. Then we're going to use a tiler node. So the tiler node is going to take that image and it's going to look really crazy when you first start it. This is not what we want at all. So we have a bunch of random stuff in here. We're just going to get rid of all that. We just want a basic grid setup. So no overlap, no random. We're going to have to adjust our scale a little bit. Let's do 0.3, 0.2. That's a little bit better. Let's do smaller, 0.15. All right. So we have a 4x4 tile of our Godot logo, and we need to get rid of some of them. So let's take this value and we're going to multiply it by the checkerboard pattern that we used earlier. So we'll take this. In this case, we want to use a vector3 math. So we can adjust this. We're going to multiply, and let's grab our checkerboard pattern, pop that down. There we go. And so what this is doing is it's taking this checkerboard pattern and multiplying the tile. So all this right here gets multiplied by 0. So it's 0. This is multiplied by 1. It still shows 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, so on. So we can add another layer to our blend. We will pop that up. We can always do the opacity again and adjust the strength of that. Now I probably would want them on the dark part, I would say. So what we can do is just invert our checkerboard. Invert that, plug that in. Now we're all on the darker versions. And there's our basic prototyping texture. I'm going to provide the actual project that I am working with and the different iterations. Basically, I've added a system to add emission to it for lighting prototype textures. You'll be able to download this and play with it. Hopefully it's useful for you. If you want to see more Material Maker tutorials, do let me know. I love working in it, and I'm finding that I really enjoy the process of creating these textures, and it's what I'm using to create retro style textures for my games. As always, you can get these source files for free on my Patreon. For paid members, I've also got all of the project source files for the other tutorials that I do, so check it out. The support makes all of these videos possible. Thanks for watching, and as always, keep creating.